I won't hold my breath, and best of luck to them if one chooses to stand up. They are enjoying their lowest approval rating ever because this is who they are trying to represent. These far-left activists who don't stand for anything. They only stand against Donald Trump, and they hate, as you just heard from that one individual who wished death upon the President of the United States, they not just hate him, they hate the nearly 80 million Americans who elected to vote him. The Democrats have officially become the party of crazy. President Trump and the Republicans are the party of common sense.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
yeah.
it is a rabies-infested henhouse.
And watching this clip, I couldn't help but think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists. But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years. They likened President Trump to Hitler. They have mocked him. They have shamed him. They have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed. These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Imagine this. Daytime TV, coffee mugs clinking, smug laughter echoing from the studio set of The View. A panel of celebrity hosts confidently toss around opinions, sure that whatever they say, no matter how exaggerated, comes with no real consequences. Then, one woman walks into a courtroom and flips their world upside down. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just fighting back. She brought an $800 million legal hammer crashing down on one of the most watched, most protected talk shows on television. This wasn't some tabloid rumor or internet spat. This was a full-scale courtroom showdown, with The View accused of crossing the line from opinion into pure defamation. And not just a little. A judge and jury agreed that what was said about her on that show went far beyond hot takes. It was reputational damage dressed up in lipstick and camera lights. The lawsuit didn't just expose the recklessness of daytime gossip. It cracked open the illusion that shows like The View are untouchable just because they've been around forever and have a polished set. One episode, one segment, one slander, too many, and boom, $800 million later, it all caught up. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue. Because what happens next is the part that had Joe Rogan laughing so hard he nearly dropped his elk jerky.
The episode of you when you were on The View, when you were running for president, you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
But does he really want to add President of the United States to his resume? A lot of people would like him to. Please, let's find out, and please welcome my friend, Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
That red hat that says "Make America Great Again." Might as well just put a sticker on the hat.
Joe Rogan didn't just laugh. He torched them. The moment news broke that The View lost the case, Rogan jumped in like it was the final round of a UFC title fight. And this wasn't some casual jab. He went full verbal knockout. He mocked the hosts, ripped apart their logic, and called out their entire structure like it was a house built on soggy cardboard. He described The View not as a political talk show, but as group therapy gone wrong aplace, where outrage is louder than reason and every host fights to out-dramatize the other. He pointed out how their so-called debates often sound like a bunch of Wikipedia pages being misread by people who haven't fact-checked anything since 2006. It was brutal and hilarious.
And I get it. I also hate Joy Behar, so I don't love you, but I also hate that squawking bird. So I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of, like, there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No, double
The
X.
Okay.
Double X.
They brought in the lowest of the double X's for that one. It's rough.
Rogan's critique hit even harder because he's been a target of theirs before. They've mocked him, dismissed him, treated him like some tinfoil hat podcaster. But here's the twist. While they were busy scoffing at elk meat and DMT stories, he was out here building one of the most influential platforms in the world. And now, with this lawsuit in the spotlight, it looked like the tables had completely turned. What really made Rogan's reaction sting was how accurate it felt. He didn't just dunk on The View, expose the foundation it was standing on. And when a mainstream TV show gets roasted by a podcaster for being less informed, you know something's broken. And trust me, it was only the beginning of their unraveling.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stopped looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, we're on the right side. And if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about this.
What really cracked the whole thing open was how The View had built its brand on mocking conservatives, especially Donald Trump, and calling anyone who disagreed with them a threat to democracy. Over and over, they pushed the idea that Trump was basically the modern-day Hitler. That's not a metaphor. They literally said it again and again. But here's the problem. Half the country didn't buy it. And they didn't forget it either. Karoline Leavitt was one of the people they targeted. They twisted her image, stretched the truth until it snapped, and painted her like some kind of cartoon villain. But she didn't just sit back and take it. She gathered evidence, lined up the facts, and waited. And when the moment was right, she hit them with legal force so strong, it shook the entire media space. And while the show kept calling Republicans conspiracy theorists, it turned out they were the ones drowning in bad takes. Wrong predictions, false claims, exaggerations that didn't just age badly, they aged like spoiled milk in a heat wave.
This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. So she by saying we should trust them because they're double checked by ABC News, and then making the stupidest fucking statement. Like you didn't listen to what I said.
Yeah.
You didn't listen to what the wildlife biologist, and that's only a part of what he said.
I can't
the
believe
other
Joy
part of what he
Behar
said
didn't
was
weigh.
there was something before that where he was explaining encounters with giant reptiles. And then there's also, listen.
It doesn't make sense to me that a middle-aged woman could be dumb.
When you're worried about losing your job and you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us and he won, and this is fucking great, and Joe Rogan believes in dragons. It's just frantic. It's
if you believe.
Every time The View spun another dramatic monologue, it was like they were digging their own grave with a diamond-studded shovel. Watching them react to the lawsuit was like watching people realize in real time that they're not bulletproof. The smiles were gone, the confidence cracked, and suddenly, the same voices who loved lecturing others were stuck in damage control. And this was just the legal fallout. The media meltdown came next. The moment that verdict hit the airwaves, it felt like a cultural explosion. Coffee mugs in living rooms across America practically shattered from the shock. The View didn't just lose a case, they got vaporized. And not in the way social media cancels someone for a day or two. This was $800 million of real-world consequences, slamming into the glittery set of daytime television like a wrecking ball. This wasn't just about defamation. It was defamation with jazz hands, a studio audience, and applause signs blinking like slot machines. Karoline Leavitt's legal team didn't just win, they obliterated the narrative. Every smug line, every dishonest spin, every eye-roll-filled hot take got dissected, fact-checked, and ripped apart in court. It was like watching a magic trick unravel in slow motion. Except the trick was pretending The View had any grip on truth to begin with. And the best part?
Is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, you know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and you know they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just it's a bizarre show.
So we had 8 minutes, and America's approach to race, pretty big topic, pretty important topic.
I think the way you before you start, I think the way you described it is brilliant, and the way we should all look at it. Of course, you're going to see race. The idea of being colorblind is ridiculous, but treat everybody. They're just human beings.
The same hosts who used to dish out moral lectures like candy now looked stunned, confused, like they couldn't believe someone had actually pushed back. For years, they treated politics like a soap opera, where drama mattered more than facts, and whoever yelled the loudest won the debate. But Karoline didn't yell. She brought receipts. And while The View crumbled under legal scrutiny, the internet turned it into a comedy roast. Memes popped up within hours. Twitter exploded.
I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. You're asking me for what the president's justification is for these tariffs. It's not up to you. You're not the president, Gabe.
To hire a spokesperson just so that Elon Musk doesn't put out tweets that then confuse federal workers.
Are my press briefings not good enough for you, Jackie? John.
Clips of their most ridiculous moments started getting remixed with violin music and court gavel sound effects. It wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a full-blown cultural takedown, and The View was the main course. Now, here's where things get really awkward. Remember how The View used to treat Donald Trump before he ran for president? Believe it or not, they welcomed him on the show with open arms. Hugs from Whoopi Goldberg. Smiles from Joy Behar. Barbara Walters calling him a friend. Back then, he was our pal Donald. But the moment he started winning in the polls, the tone flipped overnight. Suddenly, that red Make America Great Again hat turned him into public enemy #1 on their stage. It wasn't just political criticism, it became personal. They mocked his supporters, laughed at his policies, compared him to dictators, and accused him of everything under the sun.
You get people thinking, like, if you could stop Hitler by any means necessary, wouldn't you stop Hitler? And so they equate Donald Trump with Hitler and go, here you go, this is our modern Hitler. Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said this
on television.
But here's what they didn't count on. Tens of millions of Americans weren't listening to them. They were done being talked down to. And when The View started treating half the country like they were brainwashed idiots, people noticed. Karoline Leavitt represented those people. She wasn't a big-name media figure. She didn't have a huge platform. But she had something more powerful, the truth and the guts to take them to court. The View thought they could stretch her words, twist her image, and move on like nothing happened. But she made sure they didn't forget. And now, every time someone replays that old clip of Whoopi hugging Trump, it hits different. It's a reminder that behind all the outrage and dramatics, these people are playing a game. And Karoline?
View has to be, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin.
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say.
She flipped the board over. At this point, The View wasn't just losing a lawsuit, they were losing control of the entire story. What once looked like a polished talk show full of confident voices now seemed more like a chaotic mess of bad takes and desperate performances. Joe Rogan didn't hold back here either. He described the show as a rabies-infested henhouse. where facts are treated like furniture in a cat's path knocked over just for fun. And honestly, it was hard to argue with that image. Day after day, they served up what they called political commentary. But let's be real, it was more like emotional karaoke.
Yes, that's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
And at the same time, it seemed like the most interesting part was their audience seemed to be on my side.
Yes.
And that's their audience.
Yes. Well, their audience is not really their audience. Their audience is a group of people they bring in to watch television shows.
One host would start ranting, the others would nod, the audience would clap on cue, and somehow that passed as analysis. But under the spotlight of a real courtroom, that entire format fell apart. The drama couldn't save them. The applause couldn't protect them. And the smugness? That just made the fall even harder. Joe didn't just criticize the content, went for the foundation. He pointed out that if any show had actually hurt women's credibility in media, it was The View. Not because it was led by women, but because it constantly showcased the worst possible version of a political discussion. Screaming matches, one-sided arguments, cheap shots, it all looked like a parody, except they were dead serious. And when you have brilliant, informed women across the world doing real work in politics and journalism, watching The View parade around as the face of female commentary was more embarrassing than empowering. Joe said it best none of those women belong on that set, and honestly, after this mess, it's hard to disagree. But the real chaos started when The View's legal nightmare turned into a media circus. This wasn't just a stumble, it was a full-blown, high-speed tumble into a minefield. And they didn't just step on a landmine, they did cartwheels over it wearing fireworks as shoes. Karoline Leavitt, underestimated and written off by the show's smug circle, had enough.
Worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is and Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
She wasn't just fighting back against a few twisted soundbites. He was pushing back against an entire system that thought it could say anything and never face consequences. The segments about her didn't just stretch the truth, they tortured it. Her name was dragged through the mud with exaggerated claims, lazy assumptions, and all wrapped in a neat little bow of fake laughter and forced applause. But once the courtroom lights turned on, every lie, every misleading statement got called out and broken down piece by piece. The View's legal team was caught completely off guard. It was like watching someone try to do calculus with crayons. Karoline's lawyers came armed with evidence, timelines, full transcripts, while The View looked like they had just woken up to realize the cameras were still rolling. By the end of the trial, the same women who once roasted people for a living were getting legally slow roasted themselves. Their hot takes turned cold, their confidence turned into confusion. And Joe Rogan? He stood back, grinning like a man watching karma do a backflip. What started as another day of TV gossip turned into the legal equivalent of an airstrike, and The View never saw it coming. Enter Joe Rogan again, this time not just laughing, but dismantling every part of what made The View tick. He didn't come in with wild conspiracy theories or some long-winded rant. He came in with precision, like a stand-up comic who also happened to train in psychological warfare. Joe broke down the show piece by piece, calling it what it really was. A therapy session wrapped in studio lights, where outrage was staged, dissent was silenced, and every opinion had to fit the narrative or get cut off mid-sentence. He pointed out how The View loves to bring in a token conservative, someone they can interrupt, talk over, or isolate. He remembered how they treated Meghan McCain. And even further back, another conservative woman from Survivor, Jamie, always shouting just to be heard. It wasn't debate, it was a setup. A rigged game of ideological volleyball where one team played with a net and the other with duct tape over their mouths. And then Joe zoomed out. He started connecting it to something bigger. The way the modern left started embracing the same kind of authority and suppression that they used to accuse the right of. Mandatory policies, censorship, and a smug belief that whatever their side says must be right just because it's their side. Joe wasn't just mocking The View anymore. He was turning it into a lesson, a masterclass in how performance, not truth, became the show's foundation. And once that performance cracked under pressure, there was nothing solid underneath just noise, vanity, and years of bad habits finally catching up. This wasn't just defamation, it was defamation on steroids, decked out in sparkles, performed in front of clapping audiences who didn't even know half the facts. Karoline Leavitt didn't walk into court to settle a score. She brought a legal nuke straight to the front door of The View, and when it went off, the blast didn't just scorch, a few egocid blew up the entire playbook. Every moment of the trial felt like a public undressing of the show's so-called credibility. The courtroom wasn't a battle of opinions, it was a battle of evidence, and Karoline's team had plenty. They showed how the show's producers didn't just make mistakes, they actively dodged facts, like kids in gym class ducking dodgeballs. Except this wasn't a game, it was their entire reputation on the line. By the time the closing arguments hit, The View's legal team looked like they'd aged 10 years. The shiny, smug, performative punditry that made them famous suddenly looked ridiculous under real legal pressure. And the audience? Oh, they were loving it. The internet didn't miss a beat. Clips of courtroom highlights were mashed up with The View's most unhinged moments, remixed with sad violin music and exploding gavel sound effects. One post nailed it. She took their views and made them pay-per-view. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan wasn't just commenting, he was hosting the downfall like a tour guide at a museum of bad decisions. Every one-liner, every hot take they ever flung at others got served back with a side of reality, and the world was watching every second. Joe Rogan didn't stop with a few insults. She peeled back the entire show like an onion, layer by embarrassing layer. He pointed straight at the structure of The View and laughed at what it had become, a daily circus of fake outrage, staged applause, and pretend debates. He said their so-called discussions sounded like Wikipedia pages being misread by wine moms with grudges. And honestly, after watching enough clips, he wasn't wrong. The truth was out. The View wasn't creating informed conversation. It was feeding the illusion of intelligence while carefully avoiding any real challenge to their ideas. Rogan showed how their format relied on creating enemies, villains they could yell at, mock, and dismiss with no pushback. And Karoline? She flipped the script completely. Her win didn't just cost them a chunk of their production budget. It torched their whole attitude. That smug air of superiority they carried every morning on live TV? Gone. Replaced by awkward silence, stiff on-air statements, and behind-the-scenes chaos. Suddenly, the show known for tossing judgment like confetti was the one getting judged by the internet, by the public, and by the courts. And Rogan, with his usual mix of biting sarcasm and sharp breakdowns, walked his audience through every detail like he was giving a guided tour of a media implosion. Each dumb comment, each reckless take, each arrogant smirk replayed them all like blooper reels from a bad sitcom that forgot it was live. This wasn't just a loss, it was humiliation. And Joe Rogan made sure the world didn't miss a second of it. And here's where the real panic set in. Behind the cameras, The View started to unravel. Producers were scrambling. Legal consultants were reportedly brought in to vet every single sentence before airtime. Imagine trying to deliver a fiery hot take with a lawyer breathing down your neck saying, "Rephrase that or it's another $100 million." Sponsors? They vanished like daylight in a blackout. Those cozy coffee brands and overpriced wellness products? Gone. All that was left were ads for foot, fungus cream, and discount cat food, basically a billboard screaming, "Your audience is drying up." The advertisers didn't just leave because of the lawsuit. They left because the show had become radioactive. No brand wanted their name next to a panel facing the public equivalent of a slapstick courtroom beating. And the audience? They started doing something The View didn't expect, thinking. Viewers began asking real questions like, wait, did they actually say that live on TV? Or, how is this still called political commentary and not some over-the-top improv show with rage issues? Memes flooded social media. People edited Karoline's face onto an Uno reverse card. Others turned the show's logo into Court TV Defamation Edition. Someone even photoshopped the hosts onto a spinning wheel of misfortune full of legal charges. It wasn't just backlash, it was full-on digital carnage. What used to be their comfort zone sassy jokes and loud opinions had turned into a legal booby trap. And now, every word they spoke had a price tag attached. The game had changed. And The View? It was stuck playing by the old rules. But the most brutal part wasn't the memes or the lost money, it was the silence that followed. For a show built on non-stop chatter, The View suddenly went eerily quiet. No bold statements, no sassy comebacks, just awkward stillness, like the studio forgot how to breathe. These were the same women who spent years strutting like royalty on daytime TV, acting like the moral police of American politics. Now, they looked like defendants with nothing left to say. And it hit hard because the fall wasn't random, it was earned. Years of treating opinion like fact, using smugness instead of evidence, and throwing around accusations like party favors finally caught up. Karoline Leavitt didn't just walk into court with a few complaints. She walked in with proof, with timelines, with context, with receipts. She reminded everyone that no matter how glossy a show looks, lies wrapped in applause are still lies. Behind the scenes, the damage was deep. Staff were reportedly on edge. Scripts were under lockdown. Every host had to second-guess themselves before speaking, because now, one wrong word could cost millions. The power dynamic shifted instantly. For once, The View wasn't in control of the conversation, they were the target of it. This wasn't just Karoline's victory, it was a cultural reset. A message sent straight through the cameras and into every TV studio. Your fame doesn't make you immune, and if you lie, someone will make you pay for it. The media world had been jolted awake, and the tremors were only just beginning. And just when you thought the storm had passed, here comes the knockout punch, the moment that made every TV producer in America sit up straight. Because this wasn't just The View's problem anymore. Karoline's win cracked open a bigger question: how many other shows have been skating on thin legal ice? Overnight, her case became Exhibit A in every future media lawsuit PowerPoint. Legal teams across the industry started asking themselves, wait, how many times did we call someone a fascist last year? It was panic mode. Meanwhile, the internet kept roasting. Clips of The View's worst moments went viral again. Only this time, they were paired with dramatic courtroom footage and gavel sound effects. Some posts were pure genius. One meme said, "She took their views and made them pay-per-view." Another photoshopped the hosts into a courtroom game show spinning wheels labeled defamation, lawsuit, and public shame. And Joe Rogan? He kept going. Every sentence he dropped felt like a finishing move. He wasn't just mocking, they were documenting the downfall. He compared their spiral to a nature documentary about collapsing egos. And at this point, that's exactly what it was. For years, The View acted like their studio lighting gave them superpowers, that as long as they looked confident and shouted loud enough, they could say anything. But $800 million later, we all found out what they're really worth. Not just in court, but in credibility. And Karoline? She didn't just win a case, she flipped the whole media landscape on its head. What made this entire meltdown so satisfying to watch wasn't just the lawsuit or the meme, it was that for once, someone actually stood up to the media machine and won. Karoline Leavitt didn't come into this looking for fame. She came with one goal: to shut the door on this idea that big platforms can say whatever they want, ruin reputations, and walk away with a smug laugh and a studio audience. She wasn't just swinging at The View, she was taking a shot at every overpaid host who thinks snark is a substitute for substance. And it worked, because now, The View is officially a cautionary tale. They've joined the ranks of media flops right next to fake tabloid headlines about Elvis eating pancakes with Bigfoot. Once you cross the line from opinion to slander, you don't get to hide behind camera lights. Not anymore. Joe Rogan's take on all this was simple. If your empire is built on gossip and smugness, it only takes one person with a lawyer to burn it all down. And he's right. You can only play untouchable for so long before someone touches back with facts, evidence, and a lawsuit that leaves your credibility in ashes. This case sparked something deeper. People are finally seeing through the polished nonsense. Platforms like Rogan's love him, or note at least let opposing voices speak. Meanwhile, The View was just a one-sided performance pretending to be discussion. And now, that performance is over. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.